How are you? Wow. Are you serious?
I am serious.
There we go.
Okay. Man.
You were in the Matrix for a second.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this just doesn't want. And by the way, can I say Sam's nice enough to come on a day early than he normally would. This isn't his fault.
Maybe that's it. We're messing with the with the routine here.
Did you hear? Were you able to hear my question, or did it cut off? I don't know.
It cut off. I didn't hear anything.
I was saying that Dennis Schroeder came to the Kings yesterday, signed with the Kings. His agent, Mark Bartelstein, is also the agent of Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis, who are both extension eligible. I'm not trying to imply that this was a favor in any way, shape, or form, but when we keep hearing about Scott Perry and relationships and all that, does that type of stuff matter in the NBA world?
Yeah, I mean, the relationships matter. There's a like, I could see it playing a tiny factor. And, if there's something you can give a guy that you don't think affects your team building, which, I mean, if I'm being honest, in today's landscape, you don't really have, the margin for error is so small that there's not much room for that type of stuff. I mean, but yes, holistically speaking, relationships matter. Good on you guys for actually connecting dots that I had not slowed down to think about in terms of those three guys having the same agent. But, yes, it matters. And as you guys know, they needed a point guard bad. And I would like to find out. I don't know how much of Dennis's third year is guaranteed. I don't know if that's been reported. I know it's a partial.
Very small. It's a very small partial guarantee. And the gist of what I got from folks familiar with the thinking is that you could pretty much consider it a 2-year with a team option for a third. That's how minimal it is.
Yeah, a little similar to DeMar DeRozan's deal, where that is a way if you can't really get a guy to a number that he thinks he deserves annually over the first couple of years, you can throw a little on in that form, knowing that he probably won't actually be here at that point.
So, Sam, let's talk about the actual deal itself. So, I mean, Schroeder has been a solid NBA player. The Kings did need a point guard. They were in search of a couple others, maybe kicking the tires on a few others. Just the thought of what they did and how this will impact the Kings.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a mostly slow summer so far for the Kings. And Scott Perry's been in a lot of stuff in that front office in terms of trying to make things happen. I mean, as of now, and who knows if it changes anytime soon, it looks like mostly status quo with a capable point guard who, can help you win some games. I mean, it just depends for the fans. It's, are you just happy and fine with the idea that when you turn the Kings game on, at this point, I would say there's about a 50-50 chance of them winning. You know what I mean? They're going to be a middle of the pack team.
Mm-hmm.
They've got talented guys, have not been able to get off Zach LaVine, or, that's why I think you started seeing the Malik Monk discussions, is because presumably a guy like Malik was going to have more of a market. But, the talks with Detroit about doing the Schroeder deal somehow with the Monk situation as a way of freeing up, more space didn't come to pass. So, this is, for now, they're mostly running it back, but there's obviously a lot of time left.
Sam Amick joining us. Yeah, from what I'm hearing too, Sam, that Monk's that's not happening with Detroit, but it hasn't happened yet. And I know they're trying. There may be no other parts to the Schroeder deal, but they're efforting to see what else they can get out of it, which may include, but not be limited to, a desire to perhaps front load the Schroeder contract. So, obviously have more of an out, which they have some of that cleared up money. It's the full MLE, by the way, for Schroeder, which they knocked off, I think, what did we say, like $5 million in the Valanciunas deal. So it seems like the rest of this might be, they still have a gaping hole at the 4, even with Keegan Murray, if they're going to slide him again and have him start at the 4, which I don't think is his ideal position. But either way, you've still got Trey Lyles as a free agent. You still have a lack of depth even beyond that. So I would imagine after this, now the next stop's going to be getting another big down low.
Yeah, I mean, that all tracks. I will say, not that, this is not to go unrealistic and get the aggregators going, but I do think that they will continue. We've talked about it. They'll continue. There was some chatter yesterday that like Jonathan Kuminga's situation has gotten off to an extremely slow start. He's not seeing money on the market. It's going to take a while, but like if Kuminga, finds himself without his ideal options, which I think Miami is topping that list. I think Chicago's in there, then, keep your eye on that a little bit. I don't know the machinations of what that would take, but yeah, I mean, they need depth. I always hate, we've had some laughs about how I've been fairly critical of the group since they fired Mike Brown. And it's like, I got to be honest. It's just not an inspiring team. And right now they haven't changed it much. So, for me, as far as how I see it, that's kind of where it is.
Yeah. And if I remember last week, Sam, I thought that your reporting was pretty good in the fact that, look, I think they would like to see if something could ever come up with Levine, but that's going to be extremely difficult. Maybe not hearing what they want for DeRozan was kind of, I think, your classification of that. And that's why Monk's name kind of came up a little bit more. Is that still the same general read if we're talking about this team trying to change any of that core via trade, that Levine's contract is just too much? DeRozan, there's probably something there, but maybe they're not hearing what they want, and Monk might be the one that, if any, would be the one that could possibly be moved?
Yeah, I think that's all fair. It's things I've learned, I guess, and hopefully this answers your question, Jay. But as far as identity, right? Like Scott Perry he's trying to improve the defense. Like I wrote about the Trae Young thing was fascinating because there were some people who like around the edges were hoping that like a Trae Young for Zach LaVine type trade might happen with Atlanta, and the Kings had no interest in that, and largely because they're not looking to have the head of the snake, be that weak defensively. And so you learn about how Scott sees the game, and Drew Holiday, for example, it was like, man, if he was like, they still had interest and they showed interest, but they were almost like, damn, if he was 3-4 years younger, that'd be amazing. So, it's the vision is there. And so to their credit, they are really trying to craft around that vision. It's just hard. You're fighting with 29 other teams for these guys, and all these different scenarios, especially with the CBA, are really tough to pull off. But yeah, I mean, that's the general gist of what is going on, is all of these imperfect marriages with guys that aren't ecstatic to be here, but aren't upset enough to throw a fit. You know what I mean? Like even the Sabonis thing, I think is fascinating because he's been signaling like, patience and had good conversations with the new front office. And like the Schroeder move to me is an interesting one in the context of Domas, because for the short term, I could see Domas saying, listen, I just want to feel like I have a chance every night. And now you got me a point guard, and, they still got to figure out, I mean, the fact that you have so many guys who like to score the ball, and Domas wants, to get back to the higher usage that he had a couple of years ago. So it's still not even close to perfect, but it's enough that nobody's causing a ruckus, and they're just trying to wait and see what the roster looks like in the next couple months.
Sam Amick with us. Sam, we were talking about this earlier, and I'm not going to when I'm about to open up this giant hornet's nest. I know you and I have both talked off the air and both tried to get clarity on this. We're saying that one of two things, unless you have a third option, had to have happened last year when we were talking about Zach LaVine. Either A, you had an outgoing general manager making this move, which with their biggest possible rebuild/trade piece they had, and now hamstringing the Kings with no disrespect, but a probably top 5 immovable contract in the NBA. You either had that, or you had the powers that be above the now impotent general manager, outgoing GM, make these moves. Do you have clarity on which one, if either took place?
Talked about it, and where I stand on, like, there's just nothing of significance that happens with this group that doesn't have some level of influence from Vivek. And the obvious disclaimer is like that. Yes, to some degree, that is the case everywhere. He owns the team, but I for sure think that the history of the Vec's view on Zach is applies here, and the fact that he had, when Vladdy was running the show, was the group that gave Zach that restricted free agent deal that he ended up playing on in Chicago, and there was an affinity for Zach that remained when he became an option. So the mandate to remain competitive, and the part to me where the answer to your question is some degree of both, is like a front office with this particular owner as your boss, like knows like what he wants.
Yeah.
So we never truly got to see, kind of the unfettered version of what Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox, how they saw the roster, how they saw the game. And there's not many environments where front office folks are completely untethered in that way. But, I do think it's more here than most.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Do you have any examples that you either can or are willing to share of situations where front offices are untethered? I'm just honestly curious as to which teams. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how about the one that just raised the trophy?
That's the first one we all thought of. Sure. I'm just seeing if they're
not even.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that one's not even close. It's far and away number one. San Antonio is the same. Peter Holt has been of failing health, and his son has taken over. So, but I've heard nothing different out in San Antonio, and there's a thread there. Of course, Sam Presti, the OKC GM, was kind of raised in the Spurs organization. So, he knows that part well.
Sure.
Other examples.
I mean, those are two pretty good ones.
Two really good. Yeah.
No, they are. But I mean, in fairness, it's like you got me wondering, like, how long is that list? Because the other teams that come into play, the Dynasty Warriors absolutely had owner involvement.
Yeah.
Like fairly, like it was a healthier version of it.
And his son, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And two of his sons. Not one, two.
You're right. You're right. Yep.
Kirk and Kent. And, even like, I'm just going down the list in my head on the West Coast. I mean, the Lakers certainly have some degree of ownership involvement in a lot because, the synergy between, for better or worse, the synergy between Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka. So did you guys have any other?
No, I feel, let me ask you.
Good examples?
Yeah. No, I was honestly asking you for that exact reason to see if there's a through line between, hey, look at these organizations. It seems to me like Tillman Fertitta has been pretty hands off with the Rockets. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay.
Actually, no, you are. Yeah, you are wrong.
Okay.
Well,
no, it's fair.
But it's not. I mean, I don't think he's sticking his nose. Listen, Rafael Stone, their GM.
Yeah.
I thought about this today. Like, it's not a sexy story, but like, man, there needs to be more of a spotlight on the fact that he was an attorney within the Rockets for the longest time. When he replaced Daryl Morey, I'm very guilty of being a skeptic at that time, where I was like, man, he just kind of got handed this job, and this celebrated executive, and Daryl leaves, and you kind of just get promoted by default. And he has just been on a heater these last couple of years, done a wonderful job. But to your question, he literally works side by side with Patrick Fertitta, Tillman's son.
Okay.
And Tillman's very involved. I mean, there were times, even like the Harden era, when they traded James, right after that, there was a lot of involvement in terms of like Tillman could not process the idea of not being a playoff team, and they had to kind of convince him. So yes, there are degrees of it almost everywhere. The fact that so far our list of like zero involvement only goes 2 teams deep is telling. But it's part of it.
Sam, I know, I think it was last week when we talked to you, were mentioning people that the Kings were linked to. You mentioned Kuminga a little bit earlier. I don't know where the very latest is there with if the Kings or anybody else, but also Westbrook. They did get Schroeder, but is Westbrook at all in play still in Sacramento, or is that a non-starter now?
I don't have a great feel for it, to be honest with you. I wish I would have looked this up. Do you guys remember, as far as just like personal ties in that situation, did Scott Perry cross paths with Russ? We might have talked about this last week.
Wasn't he on the staff when they drafted him? With
yes,
yes. I think so, with Seattle. Yeah.
So there's the affinity there. And then, I mean, Russ, you talk about, I mean, even whether it's the Kings or somebody else, I one of the most unique back ends of a celebrated career that I've ever seen, because like he can still play, and it's his way of playing, and it's divisive, and it's feast or famine. But I can see where a team like the Kings thinks, especially that, you know, just looking for more voice and veteran presence, could consider the option. But then, man, what a tricky choice to make, because, and this is nothing personal, but with Russ, you're literally talking about Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, to some degree, fair or not. He has been the fall guy in all three of those situations, where when things didn't finish like they had hoped, there was a lot of chatter about the impact that he had on the culture and just the vibe. And so I just still find him so interesting, because then you'll certainly on that same coaching staff, on any of those three teams where people are killing him, you'll find another person who's like, man, F that. This guy's amazing. You know, he's such a divisive guy.
Well, lastly, I was looking at the CBA the other day, because that's what I like to do for fun. Goes through 2030, expires in 2930. By the way, this is one of those questions where I'm just asking you philosophically. I was thinking about this, Sam, with the Jake LaRavia thing, how it just seems dumb that Memphis didn't pick up his option. Therefore, when the Kings traded for him, it hamstrung them. They couldn't offer any more than what they could offer. Other teams could outbid him, which hurts the player. And I got to think the Players Association isn't a huge fan of that. Now you're seeing these reports that Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, that's just here locally, all over the place. The market for these guys is not great. One team has cap space, the second apron, the first apron. Now, they're stuck until I think there's an opt-out in 28, 29. But you also have expansion coming up with Seattle and Vegas. You have those fees coming in. You have everything associated with that. Do you think the CBA makes it all the way to the end? Do you think the Players Association's feeling good about the CBA right now? Are you hearing anything about that?
I mean, do I think they're feeling good about it? No. Do I think it makes it till the end? Yes.
Okay.
I mean, especially, you know, as owners, I mean, there's not really mechanisms for it not to make it to the end. The owners wanted this. They'll continue to do press conferences where they lament losing certain players, and then they will privately, you know, celebrate the control component of this contract, meaning, you know, controlled costs, black and white decisions, you know, like, yep, second apron, sorry. I mean, it is a hard cap. We've gotten to that point where we realize that. I mean, even the other day, man, in Denver, I know it was just a passing comment, but I can't believe that Josh Kroenke actually let it come out of his mouth to talk about trading Nikola Jokic at a time when, like, the Jokic thing, and I'm getting far afield, but it has quietly become, like, you know, we're still navigating through the summer of Giannis and what is he going to do? And, you know, we wrote about that today, but right behind him is Joker, who is extension eligible this summer, probably doesn't sign it because he's going to have that out, that he makes more financial sense to sign it next summer. But that is also going to raise the appetite of everybody else who is hoping they can maybe steal him away from Denver. And, you know, within the front, you know, the context of your question in the CBA, it's like, geez, like even possibly trading one of the best players of all time is something where an owner might shrug his shoulders at, because that's the CBA. Sorry, you know. So no, I like it in the short term. I think I've said I don't like it in the long term. I think I hate seeing teams, like, even with the Tatum injury, Boston should still be able to find a way to keep their core together. You know, imagine the Warriors if they got busted up after 2 years with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. You know, that would not have been quote unquote fair. So I think it's certainly got a lot of issues.
Sam Amick writes for The Athletic. He appears with us each and every Thursday, except for today, and celebrating Independence Day. We'll knock this out today, and we appreciate that. By the way, last thing on Westbrook I thought was interesting. 11 years in Oklahoma City.
Uh-huh.
He's had 5 teams in 6 years since.
Yeah.
It's been up and down for him. So we'll see. And you can make sure to follow Sam on Twitter. Also check him out at The Athletic, where you can curate the journalists on your feed on the wonderful app. Sam, love to the family. Have a great 4th of July weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, boys. You too.
Thank you.
That's Sam Amick. We're late for a break. When we come back, where have you